Hello and welcome to the latest Insurance COVID cast brought to you by Insurance Age and Insurance Post. And today we'll be looking at the subject of loss adjusting, how loss adjusters have been managed during the COVID-19 pandemic, and what the sector might look like when we come out the other side. Now I'm delighted to say, joining me today for this discussion, I have Questgates Managing Director Chris Hall, Qlaims CEO Malcolm Harvey, Criterion Operations Director Mark Pearce, Sedgwick Director, Head of UK Development Sectors Richard Sheridan, and finally McLarens Managing Director UK Ireland Stephen Wallace. Welcome, gentlemen.
Morning.
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 First of all, I'll start with you, Chris. What have you seen in terms of instructions since mid-March, really, when this pandemic took hold and we were all sent home to work?
From our point of view, it varies. We're slightly different business because we don't do the volume domestic. We mainly operate in the specialist areas and the commercial and the high net worth. What we've seen on the third party, motor and liability, instructions have reduced substantially. On commercial property, business interruption claims are keeping us very busy. On Hyperion, which is the contingency business that we own, which deals with cancellation claims, they are extremely busy. General property, high net worth, commercial work, interestingly, major losses, and by major losses I mean those over a couple of 100,000, seem to be about the same. And as far as general work is concerned, down, but I think it's down more because it's stuck with brokers and with policyholders that aren't yet intimating the claims.
Yeah. Mark, how are things for you?
Yes, similar thing. Obviously, we work primarily in the high net worth arena. We've seen a downturn, more people at home. A lot of those small losses get stopped. People turn the washing machine off when it leaks. They deal with the dripping tap, etc., etc. So the occupancy definitely helps as far as that's concerned. But I agree with Chris. Our overall large loss numbers have remained fairly steady. So that's not changed. But yeah, the volume numbers have not come through. We're probably running at about 60% of what we would normally anticipate. And I think from certainly the clients who work with, they're broadly saying the same thing. So yeah, on the commercial side, lots of the clients that we're working with are having to move some of their staff into that commercial arena to deal with lots of the BI claims that are obviously landing.
Yeah. Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm similar to Chris and Mark. We are seeing a reduction, and that is industry wide. I think we're fortunate in that we went into the lockdown with our work in progress in a strong state, having had the benefit of the higher than normal intake from the succession of winter storms. And I guess the reduction has been further suppressed by the organic growth that we as a business have enjoyed. So we have maintained our resources in full, and that capacity has been important in managing the increased number of BI claims, and also to ensure that we're prepared for the expected general uplift once the country releases the pause button.
Malcolm?
Well, I think unlike these other fine gentlemen here today, I don't actually work on the front line of claims anymore. My business is more of a technology business, but we have been providing video streaming now for insurers, adjusters, brokers, MGAs for about 2 years. And all I can say is in the last month or so, since about the middle of March, we've seen our demand for video streaming up by about just under 60%. That's indicative of where the market's going. As I said, you're better off asking these other fine gentlemen about life on the front line.
Yeah. So finally, I'll come to you, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, very similar picture to what everyone else has said, really. The motor and liability sector volumes, quite significantly down. We should expect, there's just less economic and personal activity happening, so entirely predictable. home, commercial and property, in terms of the sort of routine losses, are down. And as we've said, people are really at home and able to stop incidents becoming claims. And similarly, we're seeing still, the sort of major loss side of things holding fairly steady. Actually, the major losses are still happening. And we're continuing to service those. So, I think it sounds like a pretty consistent picture across the piece.
So Richard, and I think Malcolm's already kind of alluded to this. Obviously, we've all been told to stay at home. How
Yeah.
are you, assessing property damage where there is property damage? And are you having any kind of resistance in policyholders in terms of using these kind of remote options?
So we're obviously using a lot of remote video interviewing now. We've had a product, to be honest, we've been using that for a number of years. So what we're seeing really is an acceleration in the uptake of that way of working. So I think from sort of week 2, we've had pretty much 95% of our people able to work in that way. In terms of uptake from customers, it's very popular. 80% of our cases are being handled in that way now. And of the people that can't do remote video interviewing, it's largely because of issues such as signal, maybe lack of a smartphone, or they're simply not at the premises. So there's been a handful of cases where customers are reluctant to go down that route. So we've really ramped up, and I think we've done over 2,200 in the last month alone. So the remote video interviewing has really been what's kept things going. I think I'm sure we'll come on to. I don't think that's going to go backwards, particularly going forward.
Mark?
Yeah, very, very similar picture. Again, this has been part of our toolkit for a while. In our space in high net worth, really that personal touch, that field visit has always been a prerequisite. Clients, customers alike have never really warmed to the so-called virtual visit, but that has changed for very obvious reasons. Again, our ratio is about the same. It's about 4-to-1, somewhere in that order. Same sort of issues, occasionally issues with equipment, signal, so on and so forth. Some customers are just not comfortable doing it that way. So we are carrying out a number of field visits still, all within the strict sort of COVID-related protocols. After the weekend, after the announcement on Sunday and the 50-page document yesterday, I think there will be a small increase in the number of visits that will be taken on. But I think over the next couple of weeks, that will play out to see how much that appetite has changed.
So Malcolm, you talked about the appetite amongst kind of clients. Are you seeing policyholders? People, are you finding any resistance? Do you think they quite like this new way of working?
It's terribly interesting because Richard said that 70 to 80% is to be done by remote live streaming. We've found over the last couple of years that you've probably got about 70 to 80%. Yes, that works. But there's the 20 to 30% of people that are frail, they're vulnerable, they simply have got thick fingers and they can't download an app, onto their telephone, or they have a natural resistance to technology. So the way we've approached it is we've built an economy network around the country of what we call claim responders. And these guys and girls go out and they act as camera platforms for the adjuster back in, desk-based adjuster. And that seems to work. It works very well.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, similar comments. I mean, we've always used video technology for quite some time, but we found that the take-up is much greater now. In the past, you would have got the comment of, well, I've paid my premium, come and see me. Whereas now people are more happy not to be seen. I think the nature of our business is different from the point of view, if you look at environmental, for example, where volumes are, again, pretty much the same. We're used to using PPE for that, so it doesn't really make any great difference. And the high net worth tends to be the larger claims. And again, picking up Mark's comment, people expect to be visited. And similarly, if you're dealing with a large thatched house and whatever, and the roof's off, they're not very happy if you say, have a look at it on the app and the camera. They actually want you to go and see it. So it is a change. I think the really big change is the speed you can do things. So when you get the call that says we discovered a little bit more additional damage, instead of waiting a few days to go and see it, you can actually do it there and then. So it's definitely speeding up the process.
Finally, I'll come to you, Stephen.
Yeah, similar story. the vast majority of what we're seeing at the minute is managed remotely with no visit or indeed a deferred visit. We actually, given the current situation, brought forward investment plan and partnered with a technology company to integrate an app-based video from site solution within our global claims management system, which allows for a virtual site visit to occur with the live footage being taken under the direction of the adjuster and the two-way meeting and inspection recording uploaded to the case record. I think this is an important development for us. There has been tremendous effort deployed to accelerate this through and provide policyholders with an easy-to-use app, which cuts through many of the connection and user issues that Malcolm has touched on, and that often blight the technology solutions that appear on the face of it to be the magic wand. So I think the key is to keep it simple, but you know, we're not seeing any resistance in the current situation to remote solutions.
So can I ask Stephen, obviously, and Chris mentioned, and it has been mentioned by other people, there are situations where you do have to have people on site. How are you managing to guarantee the safety of both your adjusters and anybody they might come into contact with?
Yeah, I mean, there are. We're still undertaking site visits. Between 10 and 20% of the instructions that we're seeing necessitate a site attendance. They're only undertaken following a risk assessment, which is designed to establish a safe environment for the inspection, preferably without others present, while at the very least maintaining the minimum distance requirements and with suitable PPE. And I think we're finding there is a mutual respect in these situations, and the adjusters who are attending site are generally comfortable that by following the strict rules, they're not putting themselves or indeed anyone else at risk. We have a pandemic committee in the UK that meets weekly. In fact, they are doing a Skype meeting as I speak, and they're continually reviewing the situation to ensure that we manage the risk responsibly.
Richard?
Yeah, I mean, Sedgwick have been very, very clear through all of this that, you know, colleague safety is an absolute priority, and you know, customer safety also. So we conduct a pre-visit risk assessment about the customer's position, but also we confirm to them that, you know, our representative is, you know, is safe. We look to, you know, as you know, Stephen said, restrict the people present. Really, the purpose of the visit is to focus as much on the kind of physical inspection. We'll try, if we need to have longer conversations, we'll try and do that remotely. I think it's important to say that anyone we send to site is going on a voluntary basis. So we've got 150 people up and down the country who are nominated as key workers, and they're able to cover the, you know, the losses where you absolutely need to be on site, but they're all voluntary, and that's really important. And similarly, you know, they're all equipped with the appropriate PPE, which we've managed to maintain supplies of, because obviously we've got, you know, a reduced number of people going out to site, so we've been able to keep that, you know, steady. So it's working reasonably well, I would say.
Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, I think exactly the same. As I said, I think the video app enables you to do some triage to make sure that you've got everything right. We've made it, you know, as Richard said, you know, we've not said to staff, you must go out regardless. What we said to them is you've got to follow government guidelines. You've got to make sure you've got the right equipment. Most people will accept now that you can go and look at damage without them with you, and then have a discussion at a distance outside. So I haven't seen it causing any problems, you know, whatsoever. We've had a couple of instances where people have been stopped by the police on why are you out, but again, there's a kind of agreed wording of a letter that we provided to adjusters, and we've not had that challenged at all. That's accepted. So I think as long as you've got the procedures in place right, it's working well.
Finally, Mark.
Yeah, it's very heavily front end loaded at the minute. There's a lot of pre-work that goes on before a visit takes place, and the guys have all spoken about protocols and questionnaires and so on and so forth, and all that's really important. It's a two-way street. Staff have got to be safe and customers have got to be safe, and we've got to have the confidence of both to move forward. But I think with the strict protocols that are there right across not just our industry but lots of other industries, we've now collectively understood what things need to look like, what you need to do, what you don't need to do, and I think this is all now becoming learned behaviour. So early days we had some challenges, but I think now it's pretty straightforward. But I think the front end for us has probably doubled in terms of the number of man minutes that go into it, but it's all for the right reasons and does breed that confidence.
Can I just ask Mark? Obviously, we talked about the policyholder acceptance of using these kind of remote kind of options for assessing buildings. How is it with corporate clients, insurers, and brokers? I mean, are you joined up? Are they accepting? Are they willing to take this? You know, as basically as a perfect duplicate to the face-to-face visit?
It's sort of the only show in town, really, for many of these things. So when you've only got one choice, then that is your choice. There are always alternatives. There have always been alternatives. But as I say, in the space that we work in, it's just not been anything that anybody's ever looked for. We've had to do it on occasions in the past, but very, very rare. But I think the ability now for companies, adjusters and claims companies to do this stuff from an existing toolkit, everyone will tell you that they've had something of this ilk for some time, but the appetite for it isn't there. And I think that will be the interesting development, now comparing one with t'other, what actually gives the best customer experience, what gives the best outcome, what necessarily gives the best average claim value. All these things will need to be assessed, and like all the data the government is chewing through, the insurance industry will be doing exactly the same.
Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess the key word is pragmatism. The feedback we've had is that they've been impressed about how quickly you can stand this stuff up and expand the use of it. When it is the only option, then that they're happy to go with it. I think, as others will no doubt have experienced, they were largely accepting of it beforehand. We were doing a fair bit of work. It was on the rise. 85% of our substance losses were done remotely already. So I think it's just accelerated an existing trend, and they sort of think everyone's now looking to the future in terms of, okay, we can see that this stuff is working, it's viable. What next? And I guess that'll be the next question we come on to. But certainly we've had no negativity from anyone.
Chris?
Yeah, I think the important thing is there's actually a different reason for this than the past. I think up until this crisis came, video was being used to dumb down, if that's the right expression, save having to appoint an adjuster. What you're actually seeing is that video only works if the person that's dealing with it has got the right experience, the right expertise, and importantly, the right empathy. So I think from the point of view, and Richard makes the point on subsidence, people have got a problem and they want to know what the cause is. The fact that someone that knows what they're talking about does it by video rather than face-to-face works fine. But I think what it does is mean that you have the expertise straight away. I think in the past, all of us might well have done FNOL and appointment making with somebody less experienced, whereas now the whole thing has been handled by somebody very experienced right from day one. And interestingly, again, because of the nature of the work that we do, we have a low complaints procedure anyway, but it has dropped down substantially. And if you look at what most of the complaints were about getting that first bit right. And I think the video has really changed that. But I don't think it replaces. I think a lot of comment has been, does it replace the adjuster? I think it replaces the adjuster on low value, high volume, but that was happening anyway. I don't think it makes any difference to what will look like, other than the acceptance. I think the comment about acceptance is an important one. I mean, we've operated in our third-party property damage business for quite a long time, but we had a lot of third parties who said, you crashed into my property, you come and see it, I'm not downloading an app. Whereas now they're going, yeah, I'll download an app.
Stephen?
Well, I suspect by the time we get out of this, everyone will have had their fill of video calls and technology solutions. It's nothing new, is it? Drones have been part of the adjuster toolkit for some time, and we've seen satellite technology, immersive technology feature much more prominently in the claims world in recent years. But as I think it was Chris mentioned, the word empathy. Technology doesn't do empathy, so it is an enabler. I think there is an appetite for it, but it's got to work. And we've seen many solutions that appear on the face of it transformational and the shiny new toy. But the real challenge is around how we use it and how we integrate it. I've referenced before our video from site solution. The baseline technology has been there for many years. It's on every smartphone in the land, but file compression for storage, latency issues, security, integrity, GDPR, that's a challenge, and it's about getting this new technology that we're seeing more of working properly and efficiently. But I think to answer your question, there is an appetite. It is here to stay.
Finally, Malcolm.
Well, I think the insurance industry has always been accused of reluctance to change. I've been involved in adjusting for many, many years. Adjusting in its present form has been around since the late 18th century, so it's almost 230 years of, from the original fire officers instructing a thatcher, a stonemason, a carpenter to go out and look at the loss. The process hasn't really changed. But what's happened since COVID-19, there's been a seismic change. As I said earlier on, we've had an increase of about just under 600% in video stream usage. And as Mark rightly put it, it's the only show in town. I think that the industry has changed in a way that it couldn't even done even 12 months ago. So, I think it's for good. Yeah.
So I have to ask then, Malcolm, as perhaps the slight outsider here, what do you think the long-term impact of COVID-19 will be on the loss adjusting sector? So really to going to get to the rub here.
I think there's a general consensus of opinion here that it's been in the toolkit for a number of years, but there's been no appetite. I think that appetite will remain post-COVID. In the last couple of years that we've been trialing with various adjusters, we've proven that we can save up to 60% of operational cost. Proven. We can truncate the claim cycle, and even you can have one adjuster attending 8 or 10 losses a day without even leaving his desk. That could be anywhere in the country. We've even had one adjuster adjusting claims in another country because there's no geographical boundaries. On the corporate social responsibility side, one diesel car, a small diesel car will push out about 17 tons of carbon emissions every year. Well, we can reduce that down to about 10%. So there's a lot of win-win on the technology side. I agree with some of the guys here that you can't get away from a large or complex or major loss. You need a grizzled old experienced loss adjuster to go and see it on the ground. But there's going to be a lot more use of technology, hopefully.
Yeah. Mark?
Yeah, I think we've reached the point where we are going to see a change. Certainly businesses that have offices, the question of whether offices should remain, will they remain, questioning leases, questioning those on costs. Certainly from our perspective, whether our HQ, we decanted all of our office staff, we've actually seen productivity increase. So it does beg the question, but I think if you haven't got the commute is the big shift, particularly in the southeast. It can change things phenomenally. So I think that will bring more flexible working. Adjusters by their nature are flexible workers, but I think it's a lot of the support staff that sit around them. We need to have a serious rethink about how that works. But yeah, I think productivity as well. We've looked at I guess my only concern about taking this forward is the added value that visits provide. So on a typical visit, we might give some advice around security protections. There is that personal touch. I do have my concerns about the ability for virtual visits to deal with fraud. That gut instinct, reading people's eyes, gestures, all those sorts of things. And I'm not saying that's a reason not to do it. I just think it's an added value that we can very quickly overlook or dismiss if we shoot straight to a virtual visit environment.
Richard?
Yeah, I think the future is just going to be much more flexible, and I think it's about the appropriate use of the right tool in the right situation. I absolutely agree. I don't think we're going to go backwards from our uptake of remote working. I think the upsides in terms of speed, flexibility, and the other thing is, Chris mentioned the point, you've still got the same level of expertise. It's just being delivered via a different medium. And I think some customers now will also be changing their views on whether they want people to come and visit, certainly for the foreseeable future. And I think, if we're able to deploy that expertise without geographic constraints, so you can envisage a situation and say, well, we can do a video interview now with one of our adjusters from Glasgow office if you're in London, or you can have someone come and visit you in a couple of days. Well, I think a lot of people are going to say, well, actually, we'll do the video call now. I think there's also a really interesting thing on just a whole, and this probably for the wider society in terms of just how we work. A lot of our colleagues spend an awful lot of time traveling, commuting, time in the car. And I'm really optimistic that this will open up a more flexible way of working that will hopefully have, work-life balances too. If you can arrange your week such that, maybe your first and last calls of the day are done from home, that might enable people to maybe spend a bit more time with their families rather than being on the road all the whole time. So I think there's some really interesting opportunities there. But ultimately, it'll be about flexibility and adapting to how we keep our own colleagues safe, but also to the needs of customers.
Stephen?
Yeah, I think loss adjusting is an agile business. I think we've demonstrated our resilience in the past couple of months, an ability to adapt swiftly to a working from home solution, and indeed introduce technologies as the default approach. What it is counterintuitive for an adjuster to be sat behind a screen all day, every day. There's nothing more than they want to do but jump in the car and get to site. And that, I think Mark mentioned the sort of physical eyeballing of a damaged site or a piece of machinery. The connection that is established between the adjuster and the owners of a business or a home in the aftermath of an event that has turned their lives upside down can't be replicated. And as I said earlier, technology doesn't manage empathy. So at the volume end, it's I guess it's here to stay. And frankly, that's where we were anyway. At the technical end, it is an enabler. I think we'll see it now used more significantly, particularly for follow-ups, meetings, etc., supporting the site, the traditional site visit. The other question is around whether we will get back to our offices, and I think that has deeper societal considerations. And in fact, this morning I listened to an article around new homes being adapted to manage workspaces better, and the impact on, of course, commercial real estate. I think for me, adjusting, it is about engagement. We bring lots of different skill sets together. We've got to brainstorm issues. We've got to deal with some of the most imponderable scenarios, and that takes teamwork and engagement. So I think the office space is an important feature of what we do. but certainly there will be efficiency advantages that undoubtedly we will all be challenged to seize.
Finally, I'll come to you, Chris.
Yeah, I'd agree with everything that everybody said, but I'd also take it a little bit wider from the point of view of what is the whole insurance market going to look like? What's the reputational damage? We're already hearing from brokers of companies that are in financial trouble who are cutting their insurance, not arranging insurance. You've got the change in EL risk from office premises to having loads of people working at home and what that gives rise to. We've also got the fact that how many businesses are going to survive. You look at restaurants, pubs, entertainment, how many of those are going to reopen? And again, past experience, and maybe it's just because I'm so old, but I remember the kind of Margaret Thatcher type recession period when we saw a massive increase in fraud, in arson, both insured arson and also employee that had been made redundant type arson. So the risks are potentially going to change. And then just to add to it, you've got the fact that we've now all decided we can't survive without technology. And we've got lots of people sitting in other parts of the world, most of them about 12 years of age, working out how they can hack everything. So the cyber risks are going to become more and more relevant. So I think we're going to see the whole insurance landscape change. And that's, taking Stephen's point, that's really what loss adjusters are good at. We're good at changing how we work, and we're good at grasping expertise and applying it. I think the move away from the general kind of household, type work, that's where the video stuff's going to really work. But the big technical stuff, what's it actually going to look like?
Well, thanks very much, gentlemen. Obviously, this is going to be a very interesting to watch over the coming years. I'm sure we'll actually join up again in about 2 or 3 years' time to see if kind of this promised new land actually did materialise, or we're actually quite happy to be back in our offices because having spent 6 months with our family, we're pictured for them. So anyway, I give my thanks to Chris, Malcolm, Mark, Richard, Stephen. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Obviously, this is brought to you by Insurance Age and Insurance Post. If you want to subscribe to either titles, please use the banner, the log-on sign in the banner up here, and you can do that. Until the next COVID cast, it's goodbye from me, and stay safe, everybody. Cheerio.
Bye.